Hey, welcome everybody. We have got Dr. Herman Mays back with us today. He's going to be talking about his debate with Kent Hovind. Yeah, most of you guys have seen this already, and yes, he annihilated him. So it's not going to be about who won. We know who won. Yes, he won. But I do want to quickly note that Kent Hovind has put this video on his page, Kent Hovind Official. And at some point, I kind of want to look at the video that we put up on the NonSequitur channel, vice the video that Kent put up on his channel. Now, I sent him the raw footage. Well, actually, I sent his IT guy the raw footage, and the raw footage had a lot of technical problems, which we'll get into. Even Herman might want to mention more about that. So I had to do a lot of editing in order to make it, a decent sounding video because of all the audio problems. He didn't take any of that out. So basically, his version sounds really bad. It has a lot of drops, and the comments are just unbelievable. According to them, of course, Kent Hovind won unequivocally. And their biggest gripe was the fact that I had introduced Herman as Dr. Herman Mays and gave his curricula vitalis and his resume, basically, a little bit about him. And for Kent, I didn't address him as doctor. Well, I have a standard thing with Kent. I don't address him as doctor because he doesn't have a doctorate. It's as simple as that. And they are under the impression that he does. And so I made a challenge to them. If they can present me evidence that Kent Hovind has a doctorate, an accredited doctorate, I will rescind my thing and I will make a public apology and I will ask Kent about it, because Kent has told me specifically that he has no degree. So that's their biggest complaint. But anyways, we got Dr. Herman Mays in here. We got Vice Rhino. Yes, you guys may know Vice Rhino. He is on the list of Rachel Oates' favorite YouTubers, and he does atheist creationist videos. Let me introduce him first, because I haven't had Vice Rhino in here before, and he's really kind of a cool dude, and we kind of like talk all the time, but it's been a while, and I haven't got him in here before, so this is kind of cool for me. So Vice, who are you? Tell him.
Well, I'm you kind of covered it there. I'm Vice Rhino. I do mostly atheist videos on YouTube. I deal with creationism a lot. I've also kind of dabbled in anti-vax movement, because vaccines are something that they're very important to me. I have a family full of small kids, so health is important. Now you mentioned Kent Hovind not having any degrees. Have you read his dissertation by any chance?
I have it damn well memorized by now. Hi, my name is Kent Hovind. I've taught science for 15 years.
That thing is comedy gold. I love it. So
Yes.
Didn't they show somewhere? I think I saw a picture of this sort of school. I'm doing air quotes now. School where he got his PhD, and it's like a trailer or something like that.
Yeah, it's called Patriot Bible University. It costs about $1,800 for a PhD. Anybody can get one. You just got to give them the money, and they send you a little certificate. You do your thesis, which was, basically a 5th grade paper, and that's it.
It's amazing.
Maybe I could be a doctor.
You could be. You could be Dr. Rhino.
Yeah. Okay. Let's do that. I'll crowdfund that. Everybody donate $1. We'll send it to Patriot or. Sorry, I just had a brain fart whether it was Patriot or Liberty, kind of same caliber. But.
Liberty is
Liberty's a real university.
Liberty is actually a real school.
Yeah.
I mean, compared to this other one.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Maybe where Dr. Mays works, maybe they're looking for another adjunct professor, and you can, go teach there with your Patriot Bible College, your PhD there, Rhino.
Probably not. I have a feeling I would not leave any course from them with any more knowledge than I have now.
Well, I've seen your videos, so I disagree. I think you have a lot to offer there. But, hang on one sec. Okay. So anyways, Herman, do you want to kind of go into how this kind of transpired, how we came about to have a discussion with Kent, how you thought going into it you would do, and how that you did do? Because we're all a little bit biased here. We're not going to lie about that. But as somebody who actually was there and moderated it, I can safely say that you actually put forth evidence, none of which I saw from Kent. Zero, literally zero. His entire refutation was one big rhetoric argument. He had nothing to offer besides just quips and quotes and platitudes and just nothing. There was nothing to his argument whatsoever. So how do you think it went? And why did you want to debate him in the first place?
Well, I actually, the truth is I was kind of advised by people not to do it. And I'm of sort of a mixed mind about that. I do think that they have a point in, you do just sort of give people like Kent a platform when you debate them. And actually I'm reluctant to call what happened a debate, because it's really, if you're talking to flat earthers or young earth creationists or anti-vaxxers, it's not really a debate.
Correct.
It's,
I agree with you.
someone explaining what the science is and someone denying that science. So, there's no real debate to it. So I was kind of mixed mind, but, I sort of feel like not addressing them. Scientists have done that for a long time, and that they haven't gone away. Not pretending they're not there hasn't worked. They're still around. So I think you have to engage them to some degree, and hopefully there's some sort of fair-minded people listening in that process, who can see which side has the most credibility in a way. So, it was worth doing, how I thought I did or how I thought I would do, who knows? It's a dicey thing in this, because, really it's not like you're going to convince him of anything. So, it's tough to say how I thought I would do, because, people who are used to doing this a lot of time, even if they're completely wrong, and have no knowledge of the actual science, they sometimes can be quite good at rhetoric, and especially rhetoric that sort of stirs up their base, as it were. And sometimes it's easy for scientists to get trapped in that. So, I think I did okay, but it's for other people to judge, I guess. I think a key point I wanted to bring up was, I wanted the ball in his court about evidence that supports his position, because I think what creationists do a lot of times as part of their tactic is their only argument is to punch holes in the science, or attempt to punch holes in the science. But they forget that doing science isn't just punching holes in somebody else's idea. You have to have your own idea that makes predictions and is testable as well. And when I, brought up what, I asked him what predictions his model makes, or any model having to do with independent origins, it's like he'd never thought of that. So I think in that respect, that's probably the best tactic to take with them in a lot of ways, is to sort of avoid getting dragged into 1,000 different topics, whether it's cosmology or the age of the earth or beneficial mutations over and over again, because nobody's an expert in all those things. So you can't possibly, it's sort of silly for creationists to expect people to discuss all those topics at once. So instead of being dragged into that sort of gish gallop of going from one thing to the other, you have to put the ball in their court and ask them what predictions their model makes. And usually that's when it kind of all comes unraveled when you do that. I don't know. So I guess.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
I thought you were done. I definitely like the way you said it about debating and debates, and in the sensu lato sense of the word debate, that's what we kind of mean with these discussions, like your debate with Kent. Now, obviously, there was no actual debate there. To me, an actual debate to me is something where both sides have a legitimate argument that can be made, and let the better argument, let the better idea win out, right? In science, that does happen all the time. Scientists do debate things that are worth debating, and we don't know the right answer yet, and so they debate those things. When you have something with Kent, it is not really technically a debate in that sense, because it is you explaining the science and him rejecting it. That's it. That's not how a debate goes. And you're right. Even if you have a proposition where you're saying, okay, evolution is true or evolution is false or whatever, and whether you're supporting that proposition or not, he still has to come with some evidence to support his narrative, and he doesn't. All he does is try to give negative evidence towards an old Earth, or negative evidence against evolution, which fails miserably, because as we have demonstrated, and especially you demonstrated, and so did King Crocoduck, and so did Bill Ludlow, Kent does not know the science. He just doesn't. So he doesn't.
That's obvious.
Yeah, he doesn't know where to begin to try to actually falsify any of the actual science. It's all rhetoric.
It's all rhetoric. I think that's the main point for almost all of these. Even to some degree, the very sophisticated forms of creationism, like intelligent design, at the end of the day, they also end up being really all rhetoric. They don't have any real research program that's built specifically off of their model. So even even though they sound a lot more professional than like a Ken Ham or a Kent Hovind, even that is sort of just all rhetoric. Right down to sort of stock catchphrases that they use over and over again and things like that. So it's really not. They don't have an argument in the sense that a scientific argument exists. So yeah, but that's a tricky thing, because if people get into debates with creationists and they don't realize how good, I don't think Kent is particularly that good at the rhetoric, but they don't realize how good some of these creationists are at that rhetorical device, then you can get, drawn down a path where you might not come out as good in the debate as what you think you might.
Yeah, Kent's actually kind of sloppy in his rhetoric. I don't think he's very good at using that type of argumentation. And I like a good sophistry, believe it or not, when it's properly done. I don't.
Yeah.
He doesn't properly do it, and there is a proper way to do sophistry and stuff like that. But there are others that I have talked to that I think do rhetoric very well, and it is very hard to actually argue against them because they are knowledgeable to a point, but they also know how to twist things. And I don't know, do you think that's a deliberate thing they have, or is it just something with their own bias that they are like twisting these things, but not actually deliberately thinking they're misleading people?
I think you can't be good at that without it being deliberate. I think
so too.
We're kind of bad at it. It's the half-hearted attempts at this rhetorical approach. I don't think they know that they're doing it necessarily, but the people who are really good at it know exactly what they're doing. I think.
Yeah, and I think Kent knows what he's doing, and he's just not good at it. So, but anyways, Vice, what do you think? You've dealt with creationists a long time. Is it a pattern that you've seen as well?
Yeah, I think Hovind works. He works mostly off of confidence, not so much as rhetoric. So, like, if you don't believe the same thing as me, then you're stupid. The rest of creationists, they definitely they'll pick and choose what science they're going to accept and which ones they're going to deny, and they just like Dr. Mays said, they don't have any of their own science to stand on. They're always they'll find this one aspect of a study that they think makes it look like it agrees with them, and they'll latch onto that and completely disregard the rest of the study that explains that in a non-creationist way. It's a bit ridiculous at times.
The cherry picking they do.
Yeah, and it's hard. The more of their videos I watch, the harder it is for me to believe that it's just that it's ignorance, and it's hard to believe it's not dishonesty.
Yeah, most of them I do believe are dishonest. However, there are a few I think that just lack the cognitive processes that are required to have the ability to look at something and understand it properly. They don't get it. And I've seen it with a handful of people that I've known for a very long time, that no matter what you give them, they're going to find a way to read things improperly. And I got to think it's some kind of cognitive dysfunction.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I think a lot of people, I think like Kent Hovind and Ken Ham are kind of like the Dawkins of creationism. So, Dawkins is a popularizer of evolution. In the same sense, they're kind of popularizers of creationism, but they're not really coming up with anything new. They're just borrowing creationist arguments that have been around a long time. So, they get things from like Gish and Morris, and all these young earth creationists who have been writing books for, or writing stuff on this for 30, 40 years. And they're just parroting sort of those narratives, and they're not really coming up with anything new. They're not really thinking about the problem. They're just popularizing the creationism that they've been taught from.
Yeah, I definitely wasn't referring to Kent or Ken, because those guys, they obviously can have some cognitive ability to read something, and I think they could probably understand if they wanted to. I think they're just deliberately deceptive. I know Kent is, because I've dealt with him for a while, and I have brought to things to his attention saying, this is a claim that you've made. This is clearly not what's in there. I mean, it's evidential. And his retort is basically, well, okay, fine, but I'm not asking you to pay for my beliefs with your taxes. That's his, rejoinder. And I'm like, that has nothing to do with the fact that the claim you're making, which you're right, he doesn't create himself. He gets them from other sources. RJ calls that secondary redactors, and I think there's an appropriate term for that. Kent, he doesn't care whether the claim is valid or not. He doesn't do his due diligence. I've said, why didn't you check into this? And he just assumes that the claims are right, and he doesn't take responsibility if they're not, and he doesn't change them. They are literally still on his DVDs. He hasn't removed them yet.
Yeah, and I think that's the rhetorical part of it. I mean, when you don't care if what you're saying is necessarily supported or not, but you think it sounds good, especially sounds good to a certain audience, you're just going to use it regardless. So I think you're right. I think they kind of don't care if what they're saying is supported or true or not. I was watching today about how not Focus on the Family, but one of these Christian organizations, and then also Franklin Graham were talking about Donald Trump and paying this porn actress $130,000, and one of them said, well, we're going to give him a pass on that. And I think their exact words were, he's going to get a mulligan.
Okay, that's appropriate for Trump.
I think that really says a lot, because I think what they're willing to do is if someone supports their agenda, they're willing to sort of backslide on almost anything, and they don't care about what's true or not. And I think it's the same thing with like Ken Ham or Kent Hovind or Comfort or any of these guys. They're mainly concerned about pushing their religious agenda first and foremost. And, the scientific stuff really doesn't matter to them at all. I mean, the scientific stuff, I think, is just kind of secondary, that they're using in a way to justify their religious agenda. And they don't really care about, whether or not they're presenting accurate science or not. So I think it's a bit like that. I think they're willing to sort of take a mulligan on the science, so long as as what they're saying supports the religious narrative that they want to put forth.
Yeah, I'm completely convinced of that. Hey, Vice, you had mentioned something off air, and I'm not going to bring it up, but something similar. Did you want to at least touch on that, because it's something that you're doing right now, or do you want to not let the cat out of the bag for your?
The Lucy.
It's kind of related, because it just shows how they don't care about the truth. It's up to you. I mean,
I'm having a hard time remembering what I said.
The knee.
Oh, right, yeah. Yeah, I was actually mentioning I use Hovind as kind of the gold standard for, like, if it's a claim that not even he will make, then that shows just how thoroughly debunked it has been. And one of the claims that I've run into in a video that I'm doing, it might be an older video, so this might be before it was thoroughly debunked. But it's the idea that when they found the Lucy specimen of Australopithecus afarensis, that they just slapped a human knee on it. But in reality, that whole thing stemmed from just a misunderstanding of a question in a question and answer period with Johansson.
Yeah, and like you said, Hovind doesn't even touch that particular claim. It's
he's
still fully debunked.
Well, I think he used to, but it's on the Talk Origins page. They kept track of who they contacted about it, and so they actually sent him a letter explaining it to him, and that's when he agreed to stop using the claim.
Well, a lot of them, I mean, all the claims have been debunked. I mean, let's be realistic. Every one of them has been debunked.
Oh,
there's not one that hasn't been.
That's one of my biggest challenges as an atheist.
Understood. Yeah.
As one of my biggest challenges is coming up with original content when the stuff that I'm dealing with is all like, oh yeah, they debunked this back in the 70s.
Most of them, yeah. What's funny is I was doing a little bit of this back in the mid 90s, and it was on AOL, and it was a lot of the same stuff. There was a lot of younger creationist claims that were out there that that were very similar to what they have now. But back then, people didn't know how to refute them very well. Talk Origins is a great source for those claims. Matter of fact, I had emailed them about a week ago and asked them if they wanted to put the video on with Dr. Henke and Dr. Lachelt on one of their claims. So it was a better reference or additional reference for helium diffusion rates. And they said they would actually be glad to do that. I don't know if they are going to or not, but they definitely got back to me on it. But like I think what it is some claims are more difficult to refute than others. And whenever I hear people bring up stuff that is so fruit on the ground, like for example, I hear the word Piltdown, I'm already done with the conversation. I've already moved on. I can't go there. If they want to discuss polonium halos or helium diffusion rates or Australopithecus or something like that, I'm okay with that, right? Okay, yeah, these are not easy things for people to understand. But if they're going to bring up things like Piltdown Man or Haeckel's drawings, I just can't go there anymore. That just to me is so basic that they've been refuted for so long. It's a Pratt. It's just a point refuted 1,000 times.
Yeah, it's silly. I mean, it's and those things too. All you have to do is point out and say, well, those things were refuted by other people who accept evolution. They weren't refuted by creationists at the time. So, I mean, it's just silly to keep bringing them up over again.
Really
but
is.
like you said, it's just the same things over and over again. There's just really nothing new under the sun when it comes to creationism at all.
By the way, people in the live chat, a lot of them are saying they remembered you from going into True Empiricism hangout the other day, and they loved your discussion with them. You were never going to talk to me again after that, and I owe you like 3 beers.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
You guys don't even know the hell I went through. He's just ranting and raving at me, yelling at me on YouTube and Facebook. No, it wasn't like that, but he didn't know what he was getting himself into. I was laughing so hard. I couldn't deal with myself. I felt so bad, but oh my God, it was awesome.
I mean, he was smarter than Kent Hovind in a sense, but even then, it's still pretty naive.
That's like being the tallest kid on the short bus. It's like
yeah, it's a bit like that. Yeah, it's frustrating, but what are you gonna do?
I mean, you haven't dealt with them for a while. We've dealt with them. And matter of fact, we're going to be having a hangout tomorrow. We're having a special episode of the Geek Room on my channel. Actually, they're going to be streaming to my channel. And one of the things we're going to be talking about is one video that a guy named Eric did from Think Easy on nothing, the universe from nothing. And it was just a really, really bad video. It's well presented, I mean, as far as production value, but it just got so many things wrong. But then today, you're gonna love this. G-Man, one of the people in that hangout that you were talking to, he messaged me saying, Steve, you got to call me. And I'm like, look at man, I'm kind of over G-Man only for the sense that he did something that I think was inappropriate today. He made a comment about somebody's academics achievements without any validation that that was fraudulent. And I'm like, you just don't do that. And I can't support that. But I called him anyways. I said, yeah, what's up, G? And he was like, the separation of church and state, it's gone. There's no more separation of church and state. I'm like, what are you talking about? And he's like talking about the Johnson Act and Trump, and I'm vaguely recalling what he's talking about. I'm like, that House bill that actually went through didn't have any Trump's thing in it, and Trump didn't repeal any of the Johnson Amendment or anything like that. And he was using some video that was like months and months old. But the point being is that he didn't understand what he was reading. He didn't understand what he was seeing. And he literally thinks, even right now, that the separation of church and state is over. So that's what we're dealing with them. I mean, so we can't not make this stuff up. We can't write this stuff. They write it. They write this stuff. It writes itself. It's gold. It's common gold.
Dunning-Kruger.
Yep.
It explains everything. That's one of the most, I think, validated studies of all time is the Dunning-Kruger study. I
think it makes a lot of sense, that study. I think it definitely makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, to be so confident about stuff that you just don't know anything about is bizarre. I mean, it's just,
And it is true. The more you learn, the more you realize, shit, I don't get this, or I don't understand this. Let me understand it better, or man, there's so much more that I don't know. You usually don't feel like you're proficient in something until, long after you started studying. Now, I don't have the education level you did, but I mean, it was many years of college crammed down to a couple year program that I had. But I didn't feel comfortable that I actually knew how to operate a power plant until I was actually operating the power plant for about 3 years. Right?
I mean, one thing that creationists bring up all the time, and they bring it up like it's our Achilles heel or something like that. Like they just, as soon as they bring it up, they want to debate, is the origin of life. And to me, as a scientist, I think, wow, this is so exciting that we don't know this. And this is an area of ongoing research where we can find new things out. So to me, these areas where we don't have all the answers, that are still open questions, as a scientist, are the most exciting. That's why I would have nothing to do if there were no open areas of investigation anymore. But for creationists, they see these things as kind of flaws
I think
in our understanding. If there's any open, ongoing questions in science, that somehow science or our understanding of nature is fundamentally flawed, and that is a very Dunning-Kruger thing, where scientists love to sort of be in the I don't know realm, because that's where we do our work, and creationists are incredibly uncomfortable with that.
I think they kind of look at it, and they look at it, they think humans have achieved as much as we're capable of achieving so far. So if science hasn't figured something out yet, it's never going to. It seems to be the way they look at it.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
I think that's to some degree right.
Well, that, and it's about all they have left. Hi, guys.
Hey, Bill.
Hi, Bill.
You decided to drop in.
Bill.
Everybody know Bill Lello. We go. Oh. Yeah.
Hey, I got your message. I just got home, so
No worries. Did you watch Dr. Mays's debate with Kent?
yes, I did. I did. It was awesome.
Yeah, you did. I heard you did. Yes.
Before we go on, here's an example of this. You guys don't have to call me Dr. Mays. You can just call me Herman.
I go back and forth. I don't know. It's just
so everybody just call me Herman. So it's fine. I think Kent's more angry about whether or not you call him doctor than I am about whether or not I'm called doctor.
He really doesn't, actually. I mean, I've had that convo with him, and his supporters. His supporters. Yeah. He doesn't care. I think he does because he wants the validation, but I told him before I can't call him that. He's like, well, you just call me Ken. I'm okay with that. Because I asked him out. He doesn't have a degree. He told me.
I don't know if you guys noticed it, but when I shared your debate with a couple of the groups, especially the one that he is actually a member of, I actually made a point of saying, Mr. Kent Hovind debates Dr. Herman Mays when I introduced the video. So
a little jab in there.
That's good. That's
even
good.
You can call him Mr.
Doctor in that context.
That's still a salutation of respect, believe it or not.
Well,
but I don't know. I mean, he comes on, so I guess I have no problem with that. I mean, at least I gotta admit, he at least puts his well, he doesn't really put anything out there. He doesn't really give anything as evidence, but he at least will talk to people. You try to get a PhD from the Young Earth side and forget it. They don't ever want to go on air where they have to give any evidence to support their claims. I mean, look how difficult it's been just even get Humphreys to try to respond to the whole helium diffusion rates thing. It's nearly impossible.
Yeah, I wrote a blog post. I don't write on my blog very often, very infrequently, but I had one thing I read from Georgia Purdom at AIG that was just stupid. And I had to write something about it. And I think I even commented to her, and I might have had some Facebook comments back and forth, but that was about the extent of it. And, she would never engage somebody in this. And she has a PhD from Ohio State. So,
she's got a legit PhD.
Well, she has a PhD from Ohio State. There's.
Oh, God. That sounds like an alma mater type of.
No. I mean, this is the other thing I bring up too, is a lot of the people who are PhDs they're working at these creationist organizations. They're there for a couple reasons, really. I think primary reason they're there is because they're true believers. So they're somewhere where they're more interested in the religious agenda than they are doing science. So that's why they're there. The second reason why they're there is, they getting a tenure track a tenure track, a real research job at a university is not easy. And it's incredibly competitive. And most of them just don't have the resumes out of graduate school to do that. They might come, I mean, Georgia Purdom comes out with like, I don't know, she has like three or four papers, and she's maybe first author on one of them. You know, that's not going to get
I
you
think
a job.
Jason Lau was in the same boat.
So they're way better off to camp out at these, you know, AIG or, you know, ICR or one of these places where they can get paid okay. They don't think they get paid great, but they get paid okay, but they don't have the expectations on them that they would have, or they're not competitive. You know, they wouldn't have to go through the competitive search for an actual tenure track job. So, you know, a lot of them just aren't as qualified as I wouldn't say qualified. They aren't competitive for actual research jobs. So that's why that's a big reason why they're at the places they're at.
So most of them weren't top in their class. Most didn't go to the best schools. Most didn't do a lot of research papers, that kind of thing.
Even the ones that went to really good schools, like Ohio State's a good school, and I think didn't Lyle go to Harvard or something like that, or one of the, you know, so some of them went to really good schools, but they just didn't make a lot out of it. So, you know, there are people when you're looking for a tenure track university position that has research as a component of your job. So you're doing science. Then you have to get a PhD, but then you might have to go through 3, 4, 5, 6 years of postdoctoral work before you're even competitive to even show up as a competitive application for a tenure track job. And then at a decent school, not even a really big school, you might have 100 people for one position, and they're going to interview 3. So, you know, you're getting people. I've been in competitions for jobs before where, you know, I get beat out by 1 or 2 people. I get an interview and I get beat out by 1 or 2 people, and they've written textbooks. You know, so they're just not that kind of caliber where they can get a job at a sort of tier 1 research university. They're just not.
Yeah, Lyle actually graduated from the University of Colorado Boulder.
No, that's it. Yeah, there's another guy, biochemist guy at AIG that went to Harvard.
I know a couple of biochemists, but like Professor Ron is not. He's a biochemist, but he definitely isn't a younger creationist.
Yeah, but none of them have the publication records that would get them a tenure track job. They might get a teaching position somewhere, but they wouldn't get research positions at it.
Well, can you imagine if one of them did write a textbook? I mean, just think about that.
No,
I mean,
I can't.
Yeah, I can't either. That'd be scary.
And most of them too, you know, their papers don't have anything to do with creationism. Their
papers
are just.
You want to know something, Herman?
Hmm?
You want to know something?
Yeah.
General Han Solo, if anybody cares, General Han Solo has a collection. He has a repository of data, and he has, I think, pretty much every PhD thesis from every young creationist scientist out there. Quote scientist, right? Because obviously they're not really scientists. So he has found them all. He has hunted them down, and like for example, one of them is about a paper on rubidium strontium decay rates, and it's funny because the guy was a nuclear physicist, and I can't remember his name. Was it Miller or Monson or something like that? I can't remember. But after he got his PhD, he basically shat all over that and said, "Oh yeah, well, all that's wrong because the K rates are wrong. Everything we know is wrong." But he did his thesis on it. It's like, really?
Yeah. There's another guy who was at one of the museums in Germany, and he was, you know, a pretty successful. Now he had a real research record, and pretty successful invertebrate or paleontologist. And you know, you look through it's Gunther Belchley, I think is his name, and now he quit his job at the museum because he sort of, you know, found some religion basically, and now he's at a sort of adjunct-ish position at the Discovery Institute. But he has a real records. But you go back through his papers, you know, and they don't say anything about intelligent design or creationism. They're all straight paleontology papers about evolution, and, you know, even explicitly talk about evolution of different species of insects. So
Yeah, well, they're going to say though that basically none of their stuff is published because of the conspiracy of the
Yes.
scientific community not to publish any young Earth creationist stuff, which I find to be rather funny because look at and you please correct me if I'm wrong on this because I've never published a paper, but look at if I wanted to make a mark on science and I could refute all of evolutionary biology or all of the theory of gravity and general relativity, and I could put a paper out and do that. Why would I not want to?
Yeah, there's no better feather in your cap than throwing out an old idea that everybody accepted and convincing everybody that that idea was wrong.
Right. You think Einstein's famous because he kept with the status quo?
You'd win
Exactly.
a Nobel Prize.
Yeah, I mean,
exactly.
I find that the dumbest argument that they have.
It is. Yeah.
You know, another thing.
I have a question, Steve.
Yes.
In General Han Solo's page with all their papers, does he include the ones that are published in the Answers Research Journal?
He has the actual PhDs from the accredited ones. He does have some citations from Journal of Creations and things of that nature, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
All right. I only just found out about this recently. I think it's hilarious.
Yeah. Well, it was like, but you know what's funny? Real quick, just because something's in a Journal of Creation doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. I found out. I actually was surprised to find out on this. For example, like Dr. Lachelt had actually put a paper to the Journal of Creation, which is a crap journal. Let's be realistic, but he wanted to refute something else was in there. Obviously, Dr. Bumgarner's and Dr. Humphrey's work, and they allowed him to do so, but he had conditions, and he only had like 1,000 words. They heavily edited it. But at least he got something in there, right? So what he put in there is legit, but it's from the Journal of Creation Science. So you can't just necessarily say everything in there is bad because they did let this particular PhD, who's an older, creationist, theistic evolutionist, did publish in there. And I read it, and obviously I agreed with it because it was about the refutation of Humphrey's claims on helium diffusion rates. So not that I understood most of it, obviously, but. Bill, did you want to say something real quick? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say, one of the things that gets me about a lot of these creation scientists, once they're hired on with AIG, ICR, CMI, whatever, is they maintain their affiliations with organizations that they've been involved with maybe in the past to give themselves an air of legitimacy, where quite often these very same organizations have published statements against what it is that they're doing. The Geological Society of America would be a really good example. I've got right in front of me. I just renewed my membership, and I looked at it again this week. And they say, this is their statement. It says creationism, creation science, hydroplate theory, and intelligent design have emerged from religious thought, and because they invoke supernatural phenomena, they cannot frame questions that can be tested scientifically. Therefore, by definition, the notions of creationism in its more recent forms are not science. The immensity of geologic time and the evolutionary origin of species are concepts that pervade modern geology, biology, and other sciences that support human life. These concepts must be, therefore, treated as central themes in science courses. Without an adequate knowledge of geologic time and the evolutionary origin of species, students will not understand the processes that shape the natural environment in which they live. Now, that is the published statement on creationism by the Geological Society of America. And yet you've got Andrew Snelling and Steve Austin still putting on their bios on Answers in Genesis and places that they're members of that society. So, I mean, to me, why are they members of that society if the society publicly states what they're doing is wrong? It can only be to give an appearance of legitimacy.
Right, that's exactly what I was going to say. It is an appearance of legitimacy, nothing more. And I think that's a lot that these younger creationist groups like AIG and IRC, that's all they want. If you got a PhD title, it doesn't matter if it's in underwater basket weaving, they'll find a use for you.
I think the other reason they do it is to get access to the journals, because
true
they aren't at institutions that have any kind of journal access at all. So they probably just honestly, they probably just pay their dues to, so they can read a paper that they can then critique or, or twist or cherry pick or whatever. I think that's a lot of it. But then, if you're doing that and you don't believe in what that society is promoting, then you shouldn't list it as a affiliation. I mean, they can pay their dues and get their journal access without bothering to list it
right
as an affiliation. That part of it is sort of trying to make themselves look credible. But anybody can. I mean, it's no big deal. I mean, anybody can join any professional society in science. You just go on and pay your dues, and that's it. So it's not really a big deal.
I just asked General to join us real quick. He's the one that has the link to those PhDs. I put it in the group chat here. Do you want to, real quick, General, tell everybody about that repository you have and why you have it real quick, and how people can go access it? Because it's quite extensive.
Yeah, Stephen, if you have my permission to put in the main once this hangout finishes.
Okay.
It is just one of those fun things to do, because I'm at university. I have access to the library at my university, and I came across Rational Wiki's list of creationists, and so they've done a serviceable job by having color codes, like red for those who don't fit the category of an evolution, like a biologist, but green would fit. His field would fit the evolutionary biological perspective. Yeah, so I I spent about 10 hours one day because I had nothing else to do. I just typed it in my library folder, and I stumbled across their PhDs. I found a few, maybe about 4 at my local library, but obviously there were copies. And
who was the one that had the rubidium strontium paper? I keep forgetting his name.
Yeah,
Mason.
Jim
Thank
Mason.
you. I was like Miller, something. It was Mason. Thank you. Okay, Jim Mason.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's quite funny to see how they act. Like, I've read through most of them, and it's interesting to see them advocate a scientific method, and you can just see that, yeah, those who are legit, like Danny Faulkner is a legit one, promotes what we could understand to be, Big Bang cosmology and stuff, and yet maybe in the younger creationist literature, I don't know how to explain that. I don't know how you, and then for them to then claim, yeah, I'm a doctorate, and you can listen to me. If you're doing a 180 on your thesis, then I don't think these guys should even be called doctorates, like Dr. Danny Faulkner.
I think it's getting a. I'm hesitant to say it's no big deal, especially since I have one, but it's really not a huge big deal to finish graduate school. I mean, that's the only thing you have to do to get a doctorate is write a thesis and finish grad school. A lot of them don't do much after that. So, really being a scientist is what you do after you receive your PhD, and whether or not you have some kind of impactful career where you're publishing papers people actually cite. So, they might have degrees, but they've never, almost none of them have had very impactful careers where they've published a lot of papers that have had an influence on their field. That's really the issue. It's not so much that they have a doctorate and that's fine and all, but what have they done with it? They've ended up not doing anything with it, and that's why they end up at places like AIG and ICR and all that stuff.
But the data that these doctorates showcase, some of them unique, some of them may be refurbished, but what do you call them if they haven't done anything with it, or they've done a 180 on it, like they literally contradicted. So, for example, Jason Lyle, his thesis was on sunspots, and you require billion years in regards to the sun's age and all that stuff. But secretly, he was a younger creationist when he's writing that thesis. Apparently, according to rumors on campus.
I say people like Lyle and Georgia Purdom and I think I would describe them as people with scientific backgrounds, but they're not scientists anymore.
I don't use label for them either. I do not call them scientists. So
I think they have this background in science that they didn't really end up, pursuing science as a career. After they,
why did they go ahead with it though? Like, if they genuinely don't quote unquote believe this, even though technically, I don't really believe it's synonymous with empirical data. So, what about the psychological construct? Why would they go ahead? Like the split personality, they just mode, but deep down they don't believe any of this stuff. They're this young creationist.
I think people are very, very good at compartmentalizing things, and I think a lot of them, probably did have some genuine interest in science, but at the same time they have this, religious set of religious beliefs that tells them something else, and you can only compartmentalize things that distinct for so long and get away with it. At some point you're going to have to kind of pick one or the other. And I think that's what they did when they were in grad school. I think they were just able to, go and keep their creationism in church on Sunday, and the rest of the week just, pretend they're scientists, and maybe they were interested in it a little bit, but at the end of the day, it wasn't really what's important to them.
But you would think that thesis and research work results, like, it's showing positive results, so why would they deny it?
I know. I mean, it's
that's what gets to me.
He actually says there's evidence for evolution, but he accepts that there's a plan, there's a reason why everything looks the way it does. But he admits there's overwhelming evidence for evolution. He just outright rejects it. Because, but he says there's evidence for it. But how do you have something like Steve Austin, who, in order to be a geologist, you have to work with deep time. There's no other way around it.
Yeah.
And especially for the fact that when he does put forth something, as quote evidence for a young Earth, it's a bastardization of science. This whole Argon 40 thing with Mount St. Helens and the pyroclastic flow and the sedimentary layers that he's talking about. It's like, whoa, wait a minute here. You got to be lying off your ass, because there's no possible way a PhD can be that incompetent when you have a PhD in the field. There's no possible way. He doesn't know the difference between a sedimentary layer and pyroclastic flow, thinking that Mount St. Helens is equivalent to the Grand Canyon and uplift. No, I mean, I can't believe that somebody with that amount of education is not willfully putting forth misinformation. I can't.
Is it possible that he's maybe just barely smart enough to understand it enough to pass all his classes, but not quite smart enough? No,
because you have to be able to pass an oral review board. Like, for example, when I did my what is it called, vocal vitus, when your oral reviews or whatever it's called. Fiona mentioned the other day, and I kind of remember the term, but mine was a 4-hour review. I had 2 nuclear engineers and a couple other people, and I had 4 hours explain to them the 6-factor formula. I had to explain to them ship service motor generators. I had to explain to them pressurizer systems in a pressurized water reactor, and how the temperatures and pressures change. I mean, it was an ordeal. 4-hour-long ordeal. When you have a PhD thesis, you have to defend it. You have to explain to them that you understand the concepts. So you can't just bullshit your way through it. It's not like, going through high school. It's something you have to actually know. You can't just make do with rote memorization. I mean, am I wrong on that?
You can't bullshit your way through it if you're at Harvard or Ohio State or even Boulder. Those schools aren't going to let graduate students just bullshit their way through there.
Yeah, and Nuke School, the curriculum was designed by MIT. So yeah, it's not something
you have to be at a pretty crummy bottom of the barrel school for them to let you run through a thesis like that, and there's just not many that are that lax in what they'll accept from their graduate students. So
I'm at the point I'm convinced it's dishonesty and duplicity. I mean, it's just no other way around it. I'm sorry.
I hate thinking that of people.
I know.
I mean, I never really want to attribute to dishonesty what I can attribute to stupidity. I guess.
I know you never attribute malice to what you can.
Yeah, is that it? How it goes?
Yeah. You never attribute to malice what you can.
I think sometimes I have to come to that conclusion.
Well, I think they run it as a business. I mean,
what's that, Bill?
And, and I think they run it as a business. I think that's the huge part of it, is that it's a business to these guys, and that maybe doesn't matter as much as telling the people what they want to hear.
I think that is very true. I think because ICR and AIG, and even really to some degree like the Discovery Institute, they are businesses that push books and literature and talks, and now AIG has theme parks, and so it's the whole model that they have is something that's totally different than like a research institution. So they're buying into this thing. It is really, I think Bill's right. I think it is, they're buying into this thing as either a somewhere hybrid between a church and a corporation, and I think that's what they're into.
It's this. Morris is the one that really established the business of creationism, or young Earth creationism. When Whitcomb and Morris wrote the Genesis Flood, published in 1961, that was the real kickoff of modern young Earth creationism, and he's the one. I think it was the Creation Research Society was the first one founded, and then ICR grew out of that. When Morris moved to California, I just posted a lecture in the Creationism group on that, and if you didn't catch it, it's really good. I mean, it really goes through the history of it, and a dispute with him is what Ken Ham went off on his own and did it. I mean, he broke free from them and started Answers in Genesis, but
and they were trying
it
to
all goes back to the same.
There was that was a lot about money.
Yeah,
only so much of the money from Creationists is going to go around, and they all want a little piece of that pie. But the one thing they do have in all common is that none of them like Hovind. It's true. None of them.
Right.
None of them have anything good to say about Hovind. I'm not kidding.
Yeah.
Went to prison. Even before he went to prison, he was at odds with a lot of them over the pre-trib, post-trib thing, and just other things. And I think they sense that he takes it a little bit too far. Stuff like Erie Baby, the baby Loch Ness monster. I mean, he's as much on the fringe as Carl Baugh, down in Texas there. I mean, he's another one that they distance themselves from. Even the Christian TV channel they eventually got rid of Carl Baugh. He was just too controversial. He had his Creation Today show, or whatever it was called, Creation something, and they finally got rid of him. So
Hovind from was advocating against killing gay people.
I actually learned about Hovind's ice canopy theory in high school geography class.
Really?
Yeah, it was a Christian school, and they generally did a pretty good job with their curriculum. But that was this wasn't part of the curriculum. It was just kind of the teacher one-off, like, oh yeah, and by the way, before the flood, this is how it was.
That's crazy. I just can't imagine. Yeah, I mean, I went to public high school, and I can't say I really learned anything about evolution in high school at all, or
very minimal. Any
time in public school. But we didn't have like Bible verses or creationism stuff either. So I'm glad for that. I had enough of that at home. So, I can't imagine that being taught in a school.
But you really have to have like a background in physics. General has a background in physics, and I took obviously a little bit. I mean, but do you have to have a background like that to think, okay, here's Hovind's canopy theory. Let's look at the logistics on that. I mean, it's just nonsensical from start to finish. There's so many problems with it.
Yeah, it's crazy.
They don't seem to have an issue with it, though. They don't care about the
To be
structure.
honest, you know,
What's
why
that?
did you
God
bring
made
it
the
up?
physics work.
God made the physics work. Well, yeah.
I don't know, Herman. Have you been presented by Hovind? Like, what's the reason why he even an idea, like, or where the idea originates from?
What?
Like, why did they even bring it up? That this canopy theory.
The canopy theory? I don't know.
Yeah, like,
I mean,
like what caused them
where
to?
the water comes from for the flood, right?
Yeah, that's he's basically trying to explain where the water came from, and all that water crashing down on the earth would be so much energy released, it would just be massive. It would definitely kill all life on Earth, probably liquefy part of the crust. It just wouldn't happen. I mean, there's just no possibility.
And what about what about the big ice meteor then that Hovind promotes? Because wouldn't the ice meteor crash into this canopy of some sort?
I don't even know how you'd even
I mean,
make it work.
it's just crazy. It's really just crazy to try to make any sense.
The magnetic ice.
It's
Magnetic ice. Yeah.
I always thought
It was
the
a
ice
comet.
canopy was just his
Comet
way of,
that came into the atmosphere and it reached the magnetic ice was attracted to the poles. That's how we got our
God.
polar ice caps.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's really crazy just to sit down and think about what they've just said and try to make sense out of any of it. Like, to take it seriously is just
It hurts.
Yeah,
It really does.
The thing is, guys, I've had to come out of it kicking and screaming in agreement. But like my local church, and there's a couple in my area. I hate to say this, but you know, as if I'm throwing my Christian brothers and sisters under the bus, but it's true. Percent or maybe 5% of the people in the congregation will blindly believe that. Like, if it's presented in a cordial way, like the ice meteor and stuff like that, you just don't have the science background to critically go, hang on a second, but what about this and that? And just go along with it.
Absolutely. Really I've seen it. I've seen videos on that. About that, I think one is on your channel.
Yeah.
Where they're basically people just giving lectures to people in the church, telling you the most ridiculous science, and yet people are believing it because it's a person that they have has authority in front of them on the pulpit, telling them that it's the case.
Well, it's not just authority; it's you're being told something that confirms your identity.
That's true too, of course. But yeah, but I mean, the person giving it is up on stage, so they do have an air of authority.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, but also it really, I think that's a key, is that when you hear it, it fits the narrative that you have, and that narrative defines who you are. And that's very powerful to people. When you hear a story and it validates, not just what you believe, but who you believe that you are. There's a lot of impetus to believe that then. And I think it's you have to sort of remember that they're not thinking in a rational way. They're thinking in an emotional way. And they're gravitating towards stories that resonate with their identity more so than stories that make sense in light of the data.
And that's a powerful message, though.
To do. So,
hey, we've been at this for about an hour. Do you guys want to actually see some of the comments left on your video?
I guess.
Do you want to see it? And then we can actually look at the ones left by on Kent's channel. So let me screenshot real quick. We'll start with
yeah, I still need to watch that debate.
Oh yeah,
it's been a week. Come on, people.
Yeah, it was fun.
Okay, so can you guys see what I see here?
Yeah.
All right, so this has been out since the 17th. This already has 3,000 views, and this is on a new channel. This is the only video on this channel, so that's pretty good.
Good.
My videos get about 3,000 views. Not even that anymore. They usually get about, I don't know, half that. It's been across the board. Views have gone down, but that's pretty good for a new channel. So let's look at some of the comments here. Kent sounds stupid the moment he opens his mouth.
That's true.
Okay, we agree upon that one. Ha 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 ha! You got Kent so mad he started yelling because he can't comprehend the stuff. It was beautiful.
Yeah, he did get kind of mad at the end.
You notice that too? I've been in a lot of discussions with him. That's the most I've seen him get perturbed.
That one's kind of funny to me because I'm looking at the comments on Kent's version of the video, and one of them mentions how, you know, even and well presented all of Kent's stuff is, and, you know, he keeps a level.
Oh, we'll get to that. I got it right here, baby. I got his right here, so we'll get there. Don't worry.
Nice.
Okay, so I want to be fair, compare and contrast. But you guys tell me what you think of these comments. I mean, I can't go through all of them. There's like 634 comments. Oh my god. So I like this is my favorite. Great channel, subscribe, thank you. Okay, that's my favorite, but whatever.
Good.
It's funny how Ken is ranting about the Catholics being wrong about purgatory, etc., because it's not in the Bible. Yet he believes that the Earth and the universe is about 6,000 years old, which is also not in the Bible. Then this clown mentioned Louise L'Amour. How do you pronounce the guy's name? L'Amour,
not Louise.
Louis L'Amour. Yeah, I know. Yeah, okay, Louis L'Amour. Yeah, I'm sorry. The Western guy. Yeah, okay, Louis L'Amour. Books and a scientific debate about evolution. The classic shit, Ken. Well, you know what's funny? At least it's new, because before he was mentioning the Green Mile a lot. That was his go-to.
Well, I have to say the Catholic thing is something I love to bring up with these guys because, you know, they have invariably, I've never talked to young Earth creationists who doesn't exhibit some sort of bigotry toward Catholics. And for people who are touting themselves as presenting the Christian view, to be so bigoted towards other Christians, to me, really is something I think needs to be highlighted, because it shows that they're not so much concerned about Christianity as much as they're concerned about their version of Christianity.
It's dogma and ideology.
It's very sectarian. You know, it's like
absolutely.
Sunni and Shia kind of thing almost, that they're just, I mean, I've heard horrible things that people say about the Pope. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
Yeah, well, it's because the Catholics accept evolution. That's why. I'm sorry, go ahead.
As someone who, an ex-creationist, I can shed a little insight on that. The main problem, I think, is that the Catholics seem to, they seem to discount the whole idea that, you know, you don't need to go through another person to commune with God. You have to go to confession, talk to the priest. You have to, like, everything goes through the priest. So it's a very control-oriented thing. And so that was the whole kind of Protestant movement.
Yeah,
that was kind of my experience as a kid.
I grew up in a Southern Baptist home, and I heard a lot of this. I mean, my parents weren't that bad about it, but I just was in the air of those sort of bigoted things against Catholics that were around in Southern Baptist churches at the time, and so it's a very prevalent thing. You know, I mean, we've only had one Catholic president in the United States, so, and even when that happened, it was kind of a controversy. You know, so, you know, it is something to highlight, that you want to point out that they're saying they're representing the Christian view, but at the same time, they have these very prejudiced views against certain other Christians.
They only consider they only consider Catholics Christians when they're talking about statistics, like saying, "Oh,
exactly.
in the world, Christianity has changed this much." Then they factor in the Catholics. It's
right.
Really pretty notable too, because if you ask a lot of the people that we know that are the evangelists, the fundamentalists, and you ask them, you know, are Catholics Christians? The vast majority of them straight up say no. And then people like Kent, he doesn't say that they're not Christians. He says that just because you're Catholic doesn't mean you're a Christian. So he doesn't take.
But if you read between the lines, what he says and what, like, Ken Ham says, they don't really think of Catholics as Christian in the same way that they think of themselves as Christian.
Right. That's obvious.
That to me is disturbing.
We're not going to go through all these, but some of the better ones. This is my all-time favorite. I think this is my favorite. Can you read this one?
Yeah.
It sounds like Ken is drowning the entire time. I suppose that's because he's in over his head. Yeah, his mic. I don't know what it is, but yeah,
he's the new tech guy for sure.
Oh, that Steve's a nice guy, but he doesn't. I don't think he knows what's going on most of the time. But anyways, every one of these is in your favor. I haven't gone through all of them, so I didn't see anything on Hovind's favor. Now, comparative.
Well, I'll admit, I did read through them, and there is this Mr. ID guy. Have you seen that?
Oh, don't go there.
No, I'm not, because I watched about 3 seconds of it, and I'm like, wow, this guy's nuts. You know, there's no way I'm gonna. So
you've
that
never,
was
you've never engaged with Edgar.
pretty
Mr.
funny.
You've never talked to him, have
Steve,
you?
just briefly mention how we asked about a calculus question and
Oh, okay, well, let me just, I'll give it. Wait, here you go. Let me stop sharing for a second. Okay, in a quick nutshell, Mr. ID has actually debated Kent Hovind too, believe it or not. And why wasn't even a debate? It was a discussion.
Oh my.
But no, it gets better. It was so god awful that even Kent said, "I'm out of here." He left. He couldn't take it. He's like, "This guy's freaking nuts." And poor Edgar, with Mr. ID, is either going, "Oh, there must be computer problems." He left. Maybe he comes back because he's having computer problems. I'm like, no. He straight up thought you were nuts. Okay. Edgar is a nut job, just a total nut job. He thinks he's smarter than Einstein, and he's discovered the new intelligence that refutes all of evolution and all of gravity and just everything. He's the full-on conspiratorial nutter.
Yeah, there is kind of a little P.T. Barnum in a lot of these guys, where they just feel like, you know, the internet has sort of opened up the world to these people with egos and, you know, crazy dreams of being famous and all that stuff. And
Delusions of grandeur.
yeah, and I think people like that get on there and they just feel like they're going to put on a show, and they, you know, they're going to convince everybody, and it's going to be great. And
well, he claims to have a degree in civil engineering, right? He actually says he has a degree in civil engineering, and so, you know, I don't like the sharpshoot. What's that, Joe? What?
No, I was just going to say, some of his books are on Amazon. It was possible for it to happen, but he got one or two of his books to be "quote unquote" peer reviewed by like legit journal.
Yeah, he thinks that his neighbor read them, so they're peer reviewed. Yeah. They're
right. And the reviews that he put of it on the Amazon page are all negative, and that's another thing. It's like, why would you put negative reviews?
They're hilarious too. They're so funny. It's like, this person doesn't even have a second grade level of grasp on these topics. What the hell is he trying to even write a book for, kind of thing? But he says he has a degree in civil engineering. And again, I don't like to sharpshoot, but if you claim to have a degree in something, I would expect you have a proficiency of some kind of basic level, right? And we were talking about math, and I asked him. In general, he teaches PDEs, so he has an extensive amount of calculus under his belt. And I had a decent amount of calculus, and so I asked him, I'm like, well, okay, can you give me the derivative of x squared? Now, to anybody who doesn't know math, that would probably be a difficult question, but to anybody who's had even pre-calc or calc, that probably is a pretty simple question. And he couldn't answer it at all. He had no idea how to take a derivative.
Yeah, his answer was 0.
Yeah, his answer was 0.
Oh my God.
So we're like, wait a minute here. How do you have a degree, a civil engineering degree, which I know requires math? I mean, I've done a few math presentations. Matter of fact, on the other channel, the Great Debate Community channel, I did one on Taylor series, explaining how Taylor series works and how, you know, how it's based on the Maclaurin series, and it's fun. And the derivative of EX, I did that with the Taylor series, and I kind of enjoyed remembering some of that stuff. And he didn't know what x squared, the derivative of x squared was. It's like you take the exponent, you move to the coefficient, boom, you're done. It's it. I didn't even ask about the power rule. I didn't ask him even the details on it. Just give me an answer. Couldn't do it. And I'm like, there's no way you have a civil engineering degree. No way.
Yeah. I mean, these people have always been around, but, you know, now that we have the internet, now you see them, you know, and they can like try to get an audience and stuff like that. And that's just the weird world that we live in, is people that are this sort of delusional can have this forum, you know, so it's just weird.
All right, so here's are Kent's. Now again, he put up the raw footage, and I got to warn you guys: if you go watch this video, which you're more than welcome to do, I mean, we're not trying to hide anything. I didn't edit anything out for content. I edited out the parts where his mic was so bad it was inaudible, and I clipped some other parts out just so it flowed better, right? Because as Herman here can testify, he was dropping like left and right, and his mic was so bad. And trying to put that into a video and to the podcast, I didn't want crap out there, right? So we had to do some creative editing, and we didn't move anything out of place or anything. I had to do my introduction I did over again, and I put it in there. But anyways, he put the raw footage out there. Didn't bother to edit anything out, and it's people are complaining because the audio is bad and stuff like that. But anyways, every one of these is for Kent. Yet another evolutionist getting crushed by Dr. Hovind. How many lies in the textbook did the evolutionists defend? I'm like, okay. By the way, if anybody knows any of these people, get them in here. I swear to God, I'll give them form. Just find them, because it's like, first of all, what the hell did, quote, Dr. Hovind say that crushed Herman? I want to freaking know. I mean, all he did was explain that humans had humans, something that no biologist would disagree with. Don't get it.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Oh God, these are hilarious, dude. You haven't read these, so yeah, but wrap duct tape around your head, because your head's going to explode. If you ever trusted your internal destination in the hands of a professor's imagination, you might be an evolutionist.
Yeah.
Oh God. Let's see here. Dr. Hovind planted another seed, which hopefully shall sprout someday. Well done, sir, and thank you for everything you do. This got 11 freaking likes, dude. His pre-trib is a fraud. He was just in an art thing. But don't worry about it, because none of these people here have a clue, right? I mean, they're not the people that we're going to
I know
what's
going on.
Yeah. This is my favorite. A couple of them are my favorites. Let me show you why. Dr. Hovind is treated unfairly right at the beginning. Why wasn't Dr. Hovind's degree not listed in his credentials? Looks like a handful of bias to me. Ugh. Can anybody tell me why I didn't list his degrees?
Because he doesn't have them.
He's like, and I told this guy, and I told another guy, I'm like, look, you email me. Here's the email to the show. You email me his certified document forever for his accredited degree, and I will make a retraction, and I will list it. Nope, haven't heard from one of them. Let's see here. Yeah, see, this is the ignorance that we have. It's all presumption and assumption. Speculation is not science. The irony.
Well, wait, what's this one you're passing by? It says, "Sorry, Dr. Mays put on a clinic." Do you know that guy?
Sorry, but Dr. Mays put on a clinic. I did read this one. Yeah. Okay. So So I messaged him on something. I recognize the name. I don't know what a clinic means, but
that means I schooled him.
You schooled him. Okay. So, but yeah, because he actually was on your side. I had mentioned something to him before. Sorry, Dr. Mays put on a clinic in this one. This is someone who actually understands biology, evolution, and genetics, and doesn't get away with just saying, quote, taught it for 15 years. He clearly and instructively laid out on how it works, why it works, and what kinds of predictions we can make and test using it, even giving examples for human ancestry. Hovind completely ignored or refused to answer questions asked by Dr. Mays because he was backed into a corner and either had to admit he didn't know or would come up confronting Dr. Mays as being correct. Or confirming Dr. Mays as being correct. This is also one of the few times I've seen Hovind really rattled because he had no way to refute anything Dr. Mays said. He just continued with the standard, quote, dogs produce dogs, and quote, I don't like that. They're using my tax dollars to teach this arguments. If you follow and believe Hovind, this should be a huge wake-up call that he actually doesn't know what he's talking about. And let me tell you this.
I like that one.
I have known many young creationists, and I have seen at least 3 or 4 of them, and Bill can back me up, on Facebook that have actually said that Hovind did not know what he was talking about in this particular debate, and that he has not kept up to date on anything, and his science has sucked. Bill, have you not seen a couple people in the creationist forums say that exact same thing?
Oh yeah, definitely.
So if that's the big takeaway, then you succeeded in spades, Herman, because you've actually got a handful of people that are younger creationists going, you know what? Yeah, even Kent did so poorly in this. So
yay.
Yeah, huge award,
Yeah.
Hey, you know what? If one mind changes, then it was worth it.
Yeah,
right?
sure. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing, like I said in the beginning, I'm always reluctant to do these things, but at the end of the day, I figure that these people aren't going away, and ignoring them won't make them go away. And I might as well actually put a good counterpoint out there of the actual science in case anyone fair-minded is going to listen to it. So, it's probably worth doing, I guess.
This person said Dr. Kent Hovind utterly destroyed this poor man. Do you feel destroyed?
Yeah.
I don't think you feel destroyed. Okay. This is
No.
another one of my favorites. Somebody read this one because I can't even wrap my head around this one. That they think
we
that we
garbled
did
his
this.
voice.
Oh, shoot.
Wow.
Yeah, that we garbled his voice, that we went out of our way to garble his voice. Now, let me ask you, Herman, how bad was his mic?
It was terrible. And I kind of feel about my mic being bad because I just use my laptop.
Oh, now your mic went to hell.
That's
You just said
irony
that.
right there.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, the irony.
Yeah.
That's called just retribution. That's Satan actually.
Yeah. How about now? Okay.
Better.
Yeah. I just use my MacBook mic, and
Well, let it sit there for a while and it'll evolve.
yeah.
How many times do you make that joke?
I got to make that joke.
Well,
No,
somebody
good.
mentioned in the chat here and on this video that we're making now that the response to that needs to be, why don't you praying to make it work or function?
Yeah, there you go. But I mean, listen, look,
next time he says that,
I will tell you right now, Kyle has invested a lot of money in audio software, and he just bought some more audio software just to clean some of this stuff up. And we're talking triple digits. So we want the best audio possible. Now, the last podcast we just did, by the way, let me stop screen sharing. We had some problems with Skype, and the audio was poor, but we wanted to get something out because we didn't want to wait to saw that footage. So when you guys listen to the next podcast, which is already out, it's on iTunes. It's called Punchline, and I'll be making a video on it in the next day or two. But it's good. I mean, the audio's decent, but it could have been better. So we're gonna improve upon that. But we actually processed some of the audio on the video that I made, and we got rid of that noise that Kent had. I mean, I even cut out part of it because it was so bad. And yet, here's a guy thinking that we actually deliberately tried to make his audio worse. That's the mindset that they have.
Well, I mean, clearly he crushed you guys so bad that you had to make him unintelligible so that it sounded like you came out on top. Right?
Clearly, that we went out of the way to make him unintelligible.
Right.
Yeah. I can't wrap my head around that. Somebody's got to go over to that video and tell them that no, we actually tried cleaning up the audio.
I'm blocked from commenting.
Oh, I'm blocked. You know what the irony? I'm blocked on this account too. I have to go to the NonSequitur account to comment. I actually talked to his IT guy and said, "Can you fix that for me? Because I'm hidden, and you'll see what you'll see on his videos. It'll say like 20 replies, and you'll see like 2. Do you know what that means? That means that 18 people have been hidden users.
Oh,
That's how much he filters his pages.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. Yeah. Now I got to admit, probably a lot of it is automated. There's certain filter words that they look for, but yeah. But anyways, I'm glad you did the debate, and I think you did an exceptional job. I think it was worth it. So
yeah, I mean, it was fun. So it was worth doing.
Obviously, it wasn't meant to be that much of a challenge. Obviously, I think it's more of a challenge on your ability to counter rhetoric. And the best line of all time, got to say it, the best line of all time that whole night that I died was when you said, "I'm not here to discuss a 5-year-old's understanding of biology."
Right.
Loved it. Loved it. I couldn't have asked anything better.
That part just drives me crazy. It's just like there is this notion with people. I don't know if anybody's familiar with this book. It's called Science Blind. It's by this guy Andrew Stolman. I can put a link up to it in a minute, but he's a psychologist and mainly studies education, and he's done a lot of research on education, science education, and even education regarding evolution. And part of the problem is people have built up over time intuitions about things, and they're very comfortable with their intuitive reasoning for things, and their intuition they've developed from childhood about the world, the immediate world around them, and that just doesn't work to be a scientist. You need to sort of transcend that sort of naive intuition that we have about the world. But people just have this belief in their own common sense all the time, to where they really believe that children can understand quantum mechanics better than a scientist can. And I have there's this appeal of common sense explanations being more credible than explanations that require some expertise. And that's where that little one-liner of his comes from, is that he's appealing to people in his audience who think that my common sense is as good as any of these experts. And what he's telling me, it's like a dog whistle to them saying, you know what, you're okay. You don't need to listen to experts. What you think and how you believe the world is fine. And it's just as good as what someone with expertise is. That's the underlying sort of psychology of that. And it just drives me crazy.
I don't know how. I think it's because they can't raise their own claims up. They want to try to make it sound like all the evidence out there is just as sketchy, just as questionable, just as unsupported as theirs is. Now, somebody in the live chat, that one person who's leaving messages, pre-trib, asked a fair question. Pre-trib is a fraud. Asked, why doesn't Steve McRae debate Hovind? Well, actually, 3 years ago, back in 2015, I had a nice little conversation with Hovind on my channel. I pointed out to him that a couple of his claims were wrong. He admitted that they were wrong, or at least admitted that there was a problem with them. He said he got them from other sources and he didn't really look much into them, but we shouldn't really worry about them, and we should focus more on whale evolution and the pelvic bone of the whale, which, by the way, Jackson Wheat did a wonderful video on just recently. If you haven't seen it, go watch that. But I explained to him that the radiometric claims that he had gotten, the source material was wrong. I gave him the exact citations that he gave as citations for his claims. They weren't in there, or they were completely different what he was saying. I also corrected him on his understanding of cladistics a little bit. He hasn't changed anything. He hasn't corrected anything in his DVDs, even though he said, he said, quote, I want my presentations to be accurate. Okay, then why don't you remove the misinformation that you've said about some of your carbon dating that he has? So I have talked to Hovind and not really debated him, but I have had conversations with him, and he didn't fix what he was supposed to fix. So, it's kind of like lift a little taste in my mouth. And why do I really want to bother when I can moderate and have other people do it? Now, I did tell him this last one that at some point, maybe again, I will go through each one of his claims, his slides with him point by point. I know his 9th edition Creationist Handbook pretty well as far as the scientific claims. I think I could probably rebuke every single one of them. And if we stuck to one at a time, I think I could probably show everybody step by step why each one of them is wrong. But, maybe that'll be next month or so. But again, do I want to? I don't know. I mean,
it's one of these things like, dealing with him. It's a nice place to visit, but you don't want to live there.
I can only take so much Hovind, to be honest with you.
Yeah, once you've done it once, you kind of get it, and there's no point in beating him over and over again.
I want people to see his
what is his reach?
What's that, Vince?
What is his reach anyways? How small is his ministry? He doesn't have a lot of influence as far as these things are concerned. There are bigger fish to fry out there than him.
The way I look at it is this, and again, I don't mind if I'm wrong on this. This is purely speculative, but I think that his clan or cult or whatever has diminished immensely. However, they make a lot of noise.
Oh yeah, they do.
Yeah, so it's one of those things where they don't have a lot of size any longer, but they are vitriolic. They are extremely loyal to him, no matter what.
Yeah.
So
he's like the Donald Trump of young Earth creationism.
Worse. I think it's even worse than that. I mean, he has almost like a Jonestown type mentality.
I mean, ask Phil about the Phil is on a lot of the Facebook groups. There's all these floating Facebook groups that go around, and it's sort of like Kent Hovind fan pages, sort of, and they're nuts.
I can't imagine that. I don't see anybody be a fan of Hovind. I mean, he gets absolutely nothing right. And I can show people, I will give anybody the challenge. Anybody who's listening to this or will ever listen to this, if you're a young Earth creationist, you're welcome to come on here, and I will step by step show you how every one of his claims are wrong. And I will start with the claims that I showed him initially. That is something that I didn't discover, but I did a little more research on it. He actually makes very, very specific claims about carbon dating, with mastodons being dated two different dates and some mammoths. I show that his original source, which is the Quaternary Stratigraphic and Unglaciated Central Alaska paper, doesn't have it in there. And what it does have in there even says that the collector had soaked one of these samples in glycerin, and it was basically invalidating the carbonating results. There's so many problems with what he was saying, and so I will show you that what his claim is it's not true. So I will allow anybody that's a young Earth creationist come in and do that. Find me one.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't care, really. I mean, I don't think he cares to get it right, like he says he does.
No, but I'm looking for his followers, right? I mean, we have had people leave young Earth creationism. Wayne Fillmore left, Hunter Bailey left. I have a couple that I don't want to mention their names that are definitely doubting it, but so
his followers are a pretty hardcore group, though.
His followers are, yeah, they really are. Yeah, almost like he's a messiah figure.
Well, I think it's wrapped up in a lot of things that don't necessarily have anything to do with creationism. I think he also, because of the tax thing, I think he attracts a lot of sort of far right people because of that, because of all the sort of anti-government, which they all are kind of a little bit like
the sovereign citizen movement.
Yeah, I think he just I think there's a lot of other stuff that attracts sort of a hardcore group to him that you don't necessarily get with the rest of them.
If pre-trib wants to, if he wants to have a discussion on it, people on the outside chat are saying pre-trib will debate me. Well, I'm not really a debater any longer. I talk. I like to have conversations with the young Earth creationist.
Yeah.
Bill, somebody says,
Bill, were you going to say something about that Hovind groups that you're in on?
Oh, you hear me? All right. Yeah. You kind of hit on it a little bit, where it's not just the creationism thing; it's the anti-vax, it's the the sovereign citizen thing, it's the chemtrails, it's the the Illuminati. I mean, Hovind has made videos of all that stuff, and a lot of his followers they buy into the whole thing. So you could prove him wrong on creationism, and they're still going to follow him.
Yeah. By the way, Pre-Trib had said, why don't you bring Sarfati in here? And I have talked to Jonathan Sarfati numerous times way back when. I wanted him to come on. He was too busy doing his book tours. That's all he cared about, was going on his book tours. He never once answered any of my questions in regards to creation.com mistakes. And there's some errors on there. There's some pretty big errors and some just minor, but I call it a fallacy of irrelevant thesis. Basically, he throws stuff on there that has absolutely nothing to do with the topic to make it sound like they have a better argument than they do, which is a fallacy. He doesn't address any of that. He won't. I'll show you, Bill, one of these days, because you're really into this, and I obviously Herman is too. But I'll point it out to you guys on one of his pages on creation.com. When it comes to the human chromosome number 2 fusion site, he's actually talking about gibbons and hyloblatate, or how do you pronounce that?
Hylobates.
Hylobates. Thank you. Yeah, so lesser apes, hylobates. I don't know why I have certain pronunciation issues. I know what these things are, but trying to pronounce them is difficult for me.
But that's the genus. I think there's more than one genus of gibbon, though, but I'm not sure.
There could be, but still, Hyloblades is still a lesser ape, right? Which has, what does that have to do with the human chromosome fusion site that has to do with homoidia?
I don't know.
But he says that one of the modern ape, or one of the Madagascar apes, has 2N50. 2N equals 50, right? So I'm like, what does that have to do with the chromosomal count of other members of the apes being 48? We have 46, when that's not even part of that line. It's in the lesser apes.
Well, yeah, this is the other problem is they have this idea that evolution is all this straight line progressive thing, and if they're called lesser apes, well, they must be, our ancestors must be lesser apes, and then they, it's silly, because that's not, the gibbons are just as modern as we are. They're not. They're not
It
primitive.
was
or
completely
anything.
irrelevant to the argument, and calling it a Malaysian ape. Just I mean, yeah, Gibbon is a Malaysian ape, sure, but that's not what the argument about human chromosome 2 is about.
No, and
It's very misleading.
chromosomes can evolve in other lineages besides us. I mean, there can be chromosome evolution within the Gibbon lineage, just like there is within our lineage.
Yeah, I think some of them have 44, 46, 48, 50 or something like that. Quite a bit of difference.
So what? I mean, it's just like.
Did you ever look into Tompkins' claims? Have you ever seen his claims?
I think, yeah, I've heard a little bit about it. In fact, I might have joined in one of your discussions about. Didn't the first time I was on this show?
Yeah, that's with Ruhif. Yeah, you were here with Ruhif, right?
You were talking about this, and yeah, it's a little. I looked into it a little bit, and it's just silly. I mean, Ken Miller, I think, has a good webpage talking about how all the arguments against chromosome 2 fusion are just ridiculous. So,
yeah, I know he has some good videos on it.
But yeah, I mean, I get why they're so worried about it. So I get why it's something that they would like to go away, because, taken for what it is, it's pretty compelling evidence of common ancestry between humans and chimpanzees. So, if I were them, I would sort of be looking for a way to wriggle out of it.
But at the price of outright misleading people, like Tompkins, I mean, he actually says there's an active gene there, the DDX11L2 gene. But when you actually go to his sources, there's no active transcript for what he's saying the gene expands. There's a canonical, but that's it.
I think Miller brought that up too. And I think Miller said there's some transcription around there, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's a gene per se, if I remember.
Yeah, I think there's a low level transcription there.
Yeah, and I would say, so what? And the point is that even if there was an active gene there, the gene in question is a gene that's normally found on the ends of those chromosomes.
That's the big takeaway, huh?
Yeah. So
how to get to the middle there?
Who cares? Right. So who cares if it's active or not? I mean, that's fine. You can have. I mean, active probably just means transcribed in this case. But even if it's active, the gene itself is one that, if I recall correctly, is typically near telomeres anyway.
In the subtelomere region.
So you've got a big problem if you have, whether it's active or not, you've got a big problem that it's there. So.
Yeah, I really want to get Tompkins to talk about it. I've told Ruhif I will keep trying. I will keep trying, but Tompkins is adamantly not wanting to talk to Ruhif, and that's surprising because Ruhif was the one that showed him the problem with his 70% genomic analysis from humans and chimps, showing there's a problem with BLAST, and that the BLAST program, when he used a batch, like it was like 100,000 or more you put in, it gives erroneous results. And that was a known problem now in the BLAST program, and he had to realize that his paper was wrong. He had to realize analysis was wrong, and he did rescind it. So what he did was he tried to make a new one by using an ungap parameter, by counting indels. It's not just one specific event, but like multiple mutational differences, saying, oh, well, look, the analysis now 85. It's still not 99 or 98 like the evolutionist says.
Does he still say that there's a problem with BLAST?
Not the newer version. Not the latest ones, but that one version that Tompkins used, yeah, there was that bug in it for the batch entries.
Yeah, because I mean, saying that there's some deep problem with BLAST is like saying there's some deep flaw in Word that prevents people from writing papers.
Yeah, no, that bug has been fixed, but
BLAST, people have no idea how often biologists use BLAST. I mean, they use it constantly every day. I mean, if there were some fundamental flaw with it that's been going on for decades, I mean, I find it inconceivable that it would just persist with some flaw that would mislead us, biologically speaking, in what conclusions we draw.
Let me ask you, when you do a genomic analysis and comparison, like a genomic comparison, are you normally doing like a whole genome analysis, or are you just doing more protein coding genes analysis?
Oh, you can do. I mean, there's all sorts of things you can do. I mean, it's just it's so complicated. It's crazy. I mean, you can sometimes what we do is we just compare exomes for certain tissues. So you're just looking at the exons that you're comparing. Sometimes you can compare whole genes. It just depends on. It depends on what question you want to ask. So if you want to ask questions about gene expression, you would be comparing the exomes.
And that's the exons are the actual encoding part of the mRNA that
those
that
are the
comes
ones
off the.
that get
Okay.
spliced together. That they get
So it cuts out the
transcribed.
introns. And,
Yeah, right.
what's that?
So if you're asking questions specifically about gene expression, you might want to pay attention to that. But there's all sorts of other questions you can ask about genome and genomes and history and genome evolution that don't have anything.
But when they say that we're like 98% related to chimps.
Well, when they say that, what you do is that's a sequence identity thing. So what they're saying is if you take two sequences that are the same sequences and you compare sort of apples to apples, and that's just a pairwise sequence identity. That's
Okay,
not
so that's not a whole genome?
No, not necessarily, no. So there's lots of different ways to measure the similarity between two genomes, and sequence identity is kind of just one of them.
And I think that's the thing that the creationists have, though, where they can confuse people on, though.
Yes, that's exactly it.
Yeah.
It's just one measure. Like if you used a different measure that gave you a different number, and they say, well, if you use this measure, it's less. Well, if you use that measure for every comparison, like humans, chimpanzees, humans, gorillas, humans, mice, then it's all going to be shifted less all the way across the board. But the point is that the nested pattern is still there. Even though the number you get in a different comparison will be less, you're still going to have humans and chimpanzees coming out together all the time. So it's a little silly, really. It's just changing the number to one that, oh, well, this number says 70% if I account for deletions or something like, whatever. That's fine, but the pattern will stay pretty much the same. So it doesn't matter.
Yeah. I definitely think, though, because these things are such complicated subjects that creationists do use that to their advantage. And as a layperson like myself, who only has a very tertiary understanding of biology from what I learned in college and subsequently from being in the great debate community, I can't argue some of the things that I see on Facebook from some of the people that put forth these really complicated arguments against evolution. That's where you come in and you're like, okay, let me shit all over this.
They kind of take advantage of people's ignorance about it, and the more big words they can throw out, the more intimidated people are, and they want to just believe them if they're telling them what they want to hear. But it is crazy complicated. I mean, genomics. We just did our first whole genome project, and I had to get a lot of help on it. Frankly, I mean, we had other people, collaborators and stuff that helped me. Just the assembly of it, just putting it together from the sequence data itself. Forget about any analysis. Just you get sequence data for a whole genome project in little itty bitty chunks, and you have to stitch them all together. And that process is just pretty hairy in and of itself. So, it's a very complicated thing. And I think if anybody's going online and saying that they understand it enough to critique it, just because they read a web page, I mean, it's just crazy. It's like saying that somebody can do your brain surgery because they watch Dr. Phil or something like that. I mean, it's just nuts.
Yeah.
Oh, but I saw a Minute Physics episode on it, so I understand it completely.
Exactly, dude. That's how I am. I'm a genius.
Right.
I'm a very stable genius.
Yeah.
I
Right.
Yeah. I actually, what I do is I go watch one of Ronnie's videos, and I'm telling you, oh man, I get it. I just totally understand it after that.
Yeah,
that was a joke.
I mean, it's crazy. I mean,
it's funny. He was so just blowing smoke up your ass the other day, though, because I'm telling you right now, and I'm not lying to you. Ronnie does not know the meaning of the words he's saying. Everything he was jargon bombing you with, you asked him any detail about any of that, he has no clue. He still gets V-ATPases and V-ATPases confused.
Well, I wanted to pull
him off. He doesn't even know how ATP synthase works. He doesn't. He has no idea what a conformational change is.
Yeah, I wanted to pull him off that, and that's why I started talking about Rubisco and photosynthesis. And if I started talking, you know, because there's a lot of complexity in photosynthesis, but it's clearly because of history, because, you know, life gets stuck with certain things and it has to work around them. You know, that's not really the kind of scenario you would expect a designer to get stuck into. And when I kept changing it to photosynthesis, he kept just going back to ATPase.
Yeah, well, he does, because he never had actual biology. Right now, I don't remember anything from from that technical from my biology course. We had to study all the steps of the Krebs cycle, but not the Calvin cycle, or at least very, very basic understanding of the Calvin cycle. But if I wanted to, I could probably go back and at least review it and learn if I really want to. I don't. Why would I have to, after 25 years, know each step of the Krebs cycle, what pyruvate, what cycle, I mean, what part of the cycle goes in? I don't deal with that, right? But Ronnie, well, once like, Ronnie reads a page of a book and he thinks he's a freaking expert on it. I'm not kidding you.
Yeah. I mean, just because you could recite it really doesn't mean anything. I mean, I don't have all those steps memorized either, and I teach it, you know? So, I mean, it's just not something that I just keep at the tip of my tongue necessarily, but I kind of get the broad way of how it all works because I've taught it over and over again, but I don't have everything memorized necessarily. I mean,
all right, well, let me ask you this. And I, Vince and Bill are just probably getting bored here. We'll bring you back in here in a second, I promise. If somebody who's claiming that he at one time said and he denies this, but people do remember him saying he had a master's degree in biochemistry, and that if people knew his actual academic achievements, that they'd be too intimidated to talk to him. His words. Now, if somebody has at least an education in biology, or especially biochemistry, which, by the way, he said came naturally and easy to him, so easy that he actually walked out of the class because it was too easy. And you don't know things like, quote, an activation energy, Gibbs free energy.
did he not know that?
He has no idea what any of these terms mean.
Well, then he's bullshit. He just
absolutely no idea what these terms mean.
Yeah, if he doesn't know that, then he definitely doesn't have any biochemistry background, because you don't even have to be a biochemist to know that. I teach that. I teach an introductory biology class, and we go over that in that class. So
yeah, he I cannot tell you how many times we've had to correct him on stuff. He thought that in the electron transport chain, he thought oxygen got oxidized. Yeah. And then when Rational Mind, who's working on a PhD thesis, I believe right now, or at least up there, and myself had corrected him on that, explained to him how each step of the electron chain works, and that, you know, oil rig or Leo goes Gur. Yeah. Right. I mean, we went to the basics and explained to him what actually happens in complex 4. He said we were wrong. And then 2 weeks later, he said, well, I looked into it. Okay. Yeah. This is actually what does happen, but you know what? They're still wrong. And we're like, wait a minute. You just said what we've been telling you and we're still wrong. How does that work?
Well, it's just crazy. I mean, his whole argument is really just, and this is what it boiled down to when I talked to him, which I regret doing, is that
no, you don't. No, you don't.
Is that biology is complicated, so God. I mean, that's really.
I mean, I know you did, but I mean, how obvious was that?
How obvious was it that he didn't know what he was talking about?
No, how obvious that he was using a God of the gaps argument?
Oh, it was obvious to me from the beginning. And I even said that, and then they were like, no, it's not really that. It's just, you know, I'm like,
it's definitively what a God of the gaps argument is. They don't understand fallacies either. Every time they put out a fallacy, they get it wrong. They think scientific consensus is a fallacy of argumentum ad populum.
Yes, and that drives me crazy because, you know, in a way, for a layperson, I think it's very difficult to explain to them all the evidence for something like evolution or the Big Bang or, you know, anything in science, really. I mean, not that I don't want to do that or I wouldn't try to do that. I'm happy to try to do that. But at the end of the day, if you really want to say, okay, what should I believe? Looking to what positions are consensus positions is a pretty safe bet. You know, positions in science ideas don't become consensus in science if they're unsupported. And if they knew how science works, they would realize that, you know, scientific consensus is a pretty strong argument in and of itself. But they always just want to resort to, well, it's either an argument, a fallacy of argument from authority, or, you know, a populum fallacy or something like that. But that's not what it is. consensus is built on experts evaluating the evidence.
Yeah, if you had a consensus of 1,000 neurosurgeons that said you need brain surgery, you're probably going to go with that.
Yes, and I bring that up all the time. And for all their sort of adoration of their everyday common sense, they're really not using it in this respect, because like, you know, it's like that example. If you get a bunch of tests done because you think, say, you have cancer, but you can't interpret the test yourself because you don't have any expertise, you don't take those tests to your mechanic, right? You take them to an oncologist, and, you know, maybe say if you take them to 100 oncologists, and 99 of those 100 oncologists look at your results and say, yeah, you have cancer, you probably should do something. You know, no rational person would.
No, they're looking for the 101st that says, you probably don't have it. You probably be okay.
I mean, but nobody,
that'll be a homeopath.
Then they go to homeopathy. Yeah, exactly. Right. Homeopathy for the win, right?
I mean, most people, when it comes to consensus, are rational when it comes to that kind of consensus, but they don't see that you can use the same sort of rule to decide whether or not evolution is a well-supported theory. And I always tell them, I say, look, you don't have to believe it. I don't care if you believe it, but, you know, just admit that it's the science. You know, that's what it is. If you choose to believe it or not, I don't care. You know, but don't pretend your beliefs are scientific arguments, because they're not.
And before we forget, we got to ask, when DNA, you're gonna hate me, sorry, but when DNA goes into solution and it dissolves, does it break apart all its bonds and fall apart like tissue paper?
That's a hard no.
I will never get over it. I'm sorry. That to the day I die, I can't wrap my mind.
Yeah, I could. I mean, if I was in my lab right now, I could actually take a tube out of the freezer that is in solution, and you can't see the DNA, and I could put ethanol in there, and it would precipitate out, and you would see it precipitate out in full strands.
Yeah, no, he would call you a liar.
I've done that with strawberries as a
right.
It's a cool experiment. Yeah.
Yeah, you can literally see it. It's long enough of a molecule that you can see in these little threads. If it was degraded DNA doesn't form those big tangled threads like that.
No, he has called Dr. Fiona Robertson a liar when she has said, I've done it in the lab numerous times, and we have a video of him going, you know, no, you haven't, because that goes against all of what, you know, science says. And she's like, you're a fucking idiot. You know,
that's really the only answer to that.
What the reason, you know, the whole story behind that, maybe people don't know this whole story behind it, and long story short, the reason he went down that route was only because he wanted to make an argument that DNA couldn't form on its own back during the time of like abiogenesis initially, right? And he doesn't understand that nobody's even making the argument that DNA just spontaneously came together. Nobody's making the argument that even like all of a sudden, boom, you had an RNA molecule. He finally recognized that there were self-replicator RNAs, but he really was making this argument that the temperatures were too hot for DNA. And love this, he was saying that the water was so hot back then. His argument was, how are you going to have DNA in 2,000 degree water? And we're trying to explain to him at 2,000 degree water, you would need 27 gigapascals of pressure to keep that in liquid form. Somebody had actually did the math. That's how little he understands about thermodynamics. How do you have 2,000 degree water at atmospheric pressure?
I don't know. I mean, it's just crazy. Yeah.
But that's his understanding. That's how bad he really is. We're not exaggerating. When he was saying these words, he's just bloviating on them. I could read you his script verbatim.
Yeah. That's crazy.
Yeah, anyways, what do you guys want to add a little bit more to this? I mean, we got on for 2 hours and this was great, but I find that people like to digest these things in small portions. So Vice, what do you got to add, man? By the way, knock out your channel to people, man. You got a great channel. You got a lot of subs.
It's I basically do response videos to creationist content. A lot of it is young Earth creationism. I do touch on vaccinations, anti-vax, stuff like that. I'm thinking about branching off into more subjects in the future, but
I swear to God, you say flat Earth.
No. Staying away from the flat Earth. Intelligent design,
bullet.
Creationism with a new title, basically.
Right.
So, But
What are you going to do? Intelligent design?
no, that's the same thing as creationism.
Yeah, it really is. It really is not much difference.
But yeah, it's I like to have fun. I try not to take myself too seriously. I am not a scientist by any stretch of the imagination. I went to college for computer programming, so 90% of the stuff you guys were talking about for the last half hour went right over my head. But you know, I'm a Google jockey. I can trace sources. I'll find, okay, what's your source for that? Look that up, see how accurate it is. Find out, like you guys were talking about, scientific consensus. That's generally what I rely on. Like when I'm doing my videos, like, okay, if I'm not sure about this, I'll try and find out, like, what is the consensus on this?
So you do your research, basically.
Yeah, I try to. I mean, I make mistakes, but I'm just a layman trying to make things clear for other laymen. I used to be a young Earth creationist, so I basically YouTube videos kind of helped me out of that. So I'm just trying to do my part for the next generation.
Now I ask everybody the same question here that are ex-young Earth creationists, because we have an awful lot of them. Was it gradual, or more all of a sudden you're like, yeah, I don't believe this any longer?
It was incredibly gradual. It took years. It actually, I can point you to what started it. It started with, are you familiar with Phil Plait, the bad astronomer?
Of course. Yes, the bad astronomer.
Yes, it started with him. He wrote an article. I loved the bad astronomy website, but I would generally skip over his religious themed articles because I didn't like them. But one caught my attention, and he just mentioned at one point the star in the Christmas story rising in the east, but the wise men were already in the east. So if they followed the star that rose in the east, they would have gone the wrong direction. Yeah. And that was just like, I was a biblical inerrantist, or whatever you would call them at that point. And he's like, oh no, an error in the Bible. Okay, good. And I buried that for years. And Christmas was a hard time of year for me for a while, because I was looking at that and thinking, oh yeah, there's you know, it can be explained away with these things, but it seems more like it's just a mistake. And yeah, just stuff like that just kept on building up over the years until eventually I was sitting in church looking at the pastor thinking, like, I'm disagreeing with 90% of what this guy's saying. Do I really believe this stuff anymore?
Well, I'll tell you what I'll do. If I ever get Phil in here, which I have him on Twitter, I will make sure that you are in that hangout.
All right, perfect. I would love to meet him,
because I would love to get him in a hangout. It's a matter of time. You know, we are getting bigger names to come in and bigger names to join us. So I think I could probably be able to reach out to him and have him drop by. We'll see. That'd be cool. I
would love that. Yeah.
So, Bill, what do you want to add? Oh, by the way, feel free to put out a shout out to the Great Debate community on my channel that you appeared here.
I've already.
I know you actually did mention them before, didn't you?
Yes, I did. Yeah, I don't know. Also, don't forget, I have creationsciencefiction.com is my website. So I did put a couple things on that recently. So check that out. I haven't done much with YouTube lately. Just, the one little thing, but I haven't really done much. I don't know. Maybe I could use some suggestions from people that, as far as human origins, maybe some things that they want to hear that maybe I could do a better job of explaining. So that would be good. I just don't have a real good theme to my YouTube channel. I did clean it up the other day and unlisted some stuff that was unrelated to creationism and other things, just so it's a little more consistent.
But I will give you a suggestion right now. I would like to see a video that you can do explaining the actual methodology that they use for comparative anatomy, especially for like a femur from Homo erectus as compared to a femur from Homo sapien, and the cranium too.
It's literally how different than the femurs, but but as far as the cranium, there's different points there for sure. So,
but just as a whole, how do they determine when they find a bone what species it kind of goes to? Now, obviously, there is some that are questionable. I mean, is it Homo habilis? Is it erectus? I mean, we get that, but I mean, what's the process? What's the methodological approach they take to say, okay, these structures are similar to what we know for a modern human. Let's look at what these structures and the ratios are, and see okay, we're going to place this historically in some kind of phylogenetic line. I would be interested in that.
Right. And a lot of times you can't do it just by a partial skull or something. Teeth are huge in identifying because we have so many teeth to compare now too. So with other different ones. So.
Oh, that's another good one too. Do one on the reptile mammal transition.
That would be good
too. I mean, I know RJ loves. That's his favorite. That's RJ's favorite topic of all time. He can't get enough of that
stuff he's done. But yeah, that's a long transition there. I mean, that's nothing like we saw from ape to human, which is short. And I mean, the reptile to mammal was really a lot longer. So
that'd be awesome. I'd watch that. Okay, so next, so Herman, put a shout out to anything you want to put a shout out. I don't think you really have a channel per se.
I have a webpage.
Yep. Oh, you do have a webpage. You know what? I will put that link in the video description afterwards.
Yeah, and I have a Twitter feed. So if I can get Twitter followers or people, and my webpage is mostly about my research, so it links to our papers and what the lab is doing right now. And
let's get him some Twitter followers. I'm going to put your link right now in the live chat.
It's at Herman Mays, HERMMAYS.
I found out. By the way, I just put in the live chat there, and we'll put in the video description after it uploads. But I found out that all these different mediums, all these different platforms, it makes a difference of getting people subscribing. I mean, Twitter and Facebook has been my biggest recommenders for my videos than YouTube.
Yeah, I like Twitter.
Yeah, so but see, I didn't get the Twitter till like last year or something. I was late in the game. Let me tell you, I was like, I am never gonna get Twitter, And then you find out these people from 2008 have like 1 million Twitter followers and shit, right?
Yeah, I don't have that many, but I've been on it for a while. I've been on it for a while.
I got like 600, I think, or 500. Yeah,
something like that. But I like to respond to Ken Ham's tweets.
He hasn't blocked you yet? He hasn't blocked you?
No, not yet. No,
he hasn't blocked me either, actually, but I don't comment too much on his tweets. But
no, he did block me. I did get blocked from the Answers in Genesis webpage.
They're a little more unforgiving, I think. I don't.
And the reason there, I was asking them what kinds were or something like that. So
I don't get it. I mean, they don't like to be challenged at all.
No, but so far I'm still on his Twitter. I can still comment on his tweets. So, but yeah, Twitter followers and send people to the webpage. Is monophilia.org is my webpage.
Monophilia.org?
Yeah, it means monophyly.
Monophyly, yes. Which is another thing that I had explained to G-Man one time, the difference between paraphyletic and monophyletic, a concept utterly lost on him. If you're not sure what the difference is, go read Neil Shubin's Your Inner Fish. Great book.
Yeah, it is a great book. I met Neil Shubin before too. He's really a nice guy, actually.
Yeah, I think we tried to get him on once. I don't know what happened with that.
I'd say he's pretty busy, but
yeah,
he would be the type that would, if he had time, be on something like this. He's pretty open.
Well, maybe we'll have to reach out to him again. And all right. So, anyways, guys, let's wrap this up. If you want to watch the debate, it is on iTunes podcast. It is on the NonSequitur Show on iTunes. Please download it. We have like 380 downloads already, which is not bad at all. The second podcast, Punchline, is up. Again, some audio issues and stuff, but nothing major. We'll have it perfected by the next round coming up here. And please subscribe to this channel. Please subscribe to the Great Debate Community channel. It needs another 100 subs to get to that 1K. So if you know anybody, have them come over and sub to the Great Debate Community channel. The link is in the video description for that as well. And of course, the NonSequitur Show, as we put the videos from our podcast on that particular channel, which I should have out tomorrow. So any last words?
Well, thanks.
Thanks again.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.